into the Ashraf Garda Show.
Right. Perhaps also you may want to tell me about your experiences so far in Ramadan, some unique experiences, how this month has moved you, because in fact it has to move you and then moves community. But think about that. You can tell me. Let's get, however, to the issue of the morning, centered around Thabo Bester. With me, Ruth Hopkins, who's an independent investigative journalist who's actually based in the UK. Ruth, good morning and appreciate your time. Hi.
Good morning, and good morning to
Thank
your
you.
listeners.
Thank you. So maybe just to start with, I'm assuming everybody knows, but perhaps everybody doesn't know. Perhaps a quick one-liner in terms of what is the real issue around who this person is called Thabo Bester, what's happened to him. Then we'll talk about your thoughts.
What happened to Thabo Bester? I believe he faked his own death and escaped. And before he escaped from Mangung prison, he ran a company from prison. And I've written the book Misery Merchants about this prison.
About the prison specifically, as opposed to Thabo Bester?
Yes.
Okay. And therefore your obvious interest, the ongoing interest, I would say, in what goes on in that prison, right? Yeah?
Well, yes. And I think what happened with Thabo Bester is just a reflection of the levels of corruption and lawlessness that I've documented for nearly a decade.
Okay, so I mean, just to paraphrase even some parts of that. So here's this person who's he's been dubbed the Facebook rapist because he lured people, understandably, in terms of his modus operandi via Facebook in particular, and raped some women, and then murdered others. So therefore, a convicted rapist, a convicted murderer in prison. That's one. But then, as you made the point, yes, he's run businesses. In fact, he's been in a position where he's also been able to put out a video claiming that he's somewhere else at the launch of his own business. All of that done from his prison. It's quite remarkable and bizarre. And then it moves even further, because to get him out, there was a story that in fact he had died in prison in a fire and was burnt, or even or this person had burnt himself to death, and that was like end of story. But as we've now discovered, in fact, Thabo Bester did not die. He's alive, he's on the run, and that poses all sorts of problems, right? And lots of questions to ask around that. So perhaps then, let's start with this. What's the big question for you that emanates from where we are right now? That Thabo Bester, convicted rapist, convicted murderer, supposedly burnt himself to death, but now very much alive and has been for a good few months, I think 9 months. And now people searching for him. What's the big issue that you'd like to pick out from there?
Well, the big issue for me is the question, how come G4S, a global security company running this prison, still has the contract to run this prison? I mean, to me, this is just yet another very spectacular and very crazy example, but it's just yet another example of the abuse and the levels of corruption that I've been documenting for over 10 years in my book, Misery Merchants. A film came out, Prison for Profit. And there's been widespread torture, forced injections with antipsychotic drugs. Prisoners have been tortured to death, and the deaths have been covered up as suicide. And I've documented this, and I've approached the government. I've approached G4S. I've asked them for comments for years and years and years. They just look the other way. And my question now is, where's the accountability? Isn't it now time to call for an inquiry? Like, what is happening with these private security contractors in South Africa? What are they up to? What are they doing? Is these levels of human rights violations, is it really acceptable to a society such as a country such as South Africa, which has such a proud history in terms of human rights? It's horrific.
Well, I suppose the big issue here is what is it normal to actually outsource the running of and the management of prisons? And if that's the case, how widespread is that around the world? And how did this company that you refer to, G4S, how did they actually get the contract in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a huge. The private security sector is really huge, represents billions. I mean, even G4S is the biggest security provider in the world. It has revenue of around £7 billion. and runs prisons all over the world. And if you look specifically at G4S, there are many other private security providers out there. But if you look at their prison operation in the UK, in the US, in Australia, they're running into very similar problems. Here in the UK, for example, in 2018, the situation in Birmingham prison, which was run by G4S, got so out of control that the state had to take over. What happened in South Africa in 2013? The situation in Mangaung prison got so out of control that the state had to take over. However, the difference is that in South Africa, the prison was handed back to G4S without any explanation, whereas in the UK, the state still runs Birmingham prison. So there's a difference. Sorry, and I forgot your second question.
Well, I'm asking how widespread is that. In a way, you've answered that it is. That means the idea of outsourcing a prison management is not South African only. It's been done in many countries, and you've just given examples of that. Is that not strange for you? Just looking at that as a principle, why would you outsource the management of a prison? I'm just thinking about outsourcing an army to go and defend your country. I mean, people call them mercenaries. So why would you do the same thing with prisons?
Yeah, no, that to me, the principal moral question: would you derive a profit off the incarceration of criminals, and and the punishment of people who've transgressed norms in society? In my view, should never be outsourced. It should never be attached to a profit-driven incentive. I mean, there's one thing to say: should prisons be private, not publicly run? Should they be privately run? That's a discussion you can have, but should they be private and for profit? I mean, I can imagine having a non-profit prison, for example. That could be something that's very defendable, I think, if you look at, again, human rights and protection of human dignity. But attaching the incarceration of individuals to a profit incentive, to me, is wrong.
Okay, and then even if it is for profit, you are suggesting, certainly with the South African example, they are not doing a very good job. If, for example, there have been so many problems in Mangaung in particular, and now we have a situation where a high-profile prisoner has escaped. There's also this fictitious death, and all that has been reported over the last few years. And what does that therefore say about their ability or inability to manage that prison, be it for profit or even not for profit?
Well, I used to work for the Wits Justice Project at Wits University in Johannesburg, and we were a collective of investigative journalists looking into the criminal justice system, and I looked mainly at prisons, and I visited, I think, around 20 or 30 prisons throughout the country. So I'm very familiar with conditions in state-run prisons, Pollsmoor, for example, Sun City. I've been there multiple times. And I would really say Mangaung prison, again, R1 billion contracts, billions of rands, is the most violent prison out there, the most horrific prison out there. And there are South African companies who are actually the financial power behind this prison contract, because there's a South African consortium of shareholders called BCC, Bloemfontein Correctional Contracts, and they earn off this prison contract. Fikile Mangaung, 10 Alliance Mangaung, and a Quasi Community Trust. And it's run by people who are high up in the ANC, such as Papi Mokoena, the chair of BCC. He used to be the mayor of Bloemfontein, and he's very linked and he has ties with the high up in the ANC. That again is also problematic to me, that South Africans are earning off the incarceration of South Africans.
And they're certainly doing that. I understand now there's been talk, certainly from the Minister of Law and Correctional Services and perhaps others, high rankers, that in fact that contract with G4S will be terminated or will not be extended when it runs out, I think in a year's time or something. So in fact, they are now seeing, whether it's because of public pressure or people like yourself, they see what the public are seeing, that it's unacceptable that they can actually run and manage those prisons. Is that good for you to hear that?
Well, yeah, I am just utterly surprised that G4S has all this time has retained the contract. I mean, I started investigating this prison in 2012. In 2013, G4S lost control. DCS took over the prison. I thought, now they're going to lose the contract. then they were given back the prison. There's been zero accountability. And I think it's high time for like a public inquiry into these private security contractors and these private prisons with all these irregularities, all these very serious human rights violations. People are getting tortured to death, and it's just ongoing. And this company is still making a profit, and should actually just be criminally prosecuted. Shouldn't be allowed to treat people in this way.
And I mean, in your investigations in terms of writing, well, the two books you refer to, you're suggesting that there's been there's been a series of these type of human rights abuses under their watch, and they've obviously let it ride by, right? So one thing is committing a crime on the outside, but the other is committing crimes and abuses under the watch of an internal organization within a prison, and they've allowed that. Have they ever responded to, I think you've sort of said they haven't, 2 questions you've asked them and for comment over the years, not just now?
No, barely. I mean, they have responded, but then they've just responded to deny everything and said that they don't tolerate violence, whereas I'm presenting very clear facts that they do. Not just violence, but murder, forced injections with antipsychotic drugs. And the sad thing is that DCS has confirmed this, that this was happening, and DCS has taken no action. And even also the broader South African society. Where's the South African Human Rights Commission? Where's JIGS? Where's accountability? Why does this company still have the contract? They're allowed to sit out their contract until 2026. There should be criminal prosecutions. There should be a public inquiry. There should be accountability.
Okay, let's I know you need to leave pretty shortly. Let's then move away from where they are, and let's talk about Thabo Bester. What is your understanding of what's happened there?
Well, this is not a case that I've investigated myself, so I know just as much as everybody else. I have been talking to my sources in prison, and what I've learned from them is that a fire broke out in the unit where Bester was housed. It was an explosion. There was probably fuel involved, and then his corpse was, well, not his corpse, somebody else's corpse was carried out through the emergency exit, and he was then spotted on CCTV. And I believe the responsible people were dismissed, but that took a while. And I believe the responsible people earned handsomely off this crime, really, off this corruption. And again, my question is, where's the accountability? How come this is happening in broad daylight, in plain sight? Everybody knows that this is going on, and not just this escape, also widespread torture, abuse, and violence. Why is this happening? And there's no accountability.
Let's just stay with this point. I understand you're there from a distance, but the question on the escape, are you suggesting, based upon your understanding of how these prisons work, that he could have only escaped because of somebody higher up inside the prison, right? In this case, from G4S or correctional services being complicit in his escape, or was his master plan just so grand that nobody could get it? Meaning, which one of the two? And if it's the former, then again, it puts us down that other line to say, well, are there many other examples like that, in fact, where people who are put into prison for the reasons that are 100% correct are then allowed to, and the word is allowed to escape because of whatever, many, many reasons, carrying favors, money, corruption, whatever?
I mean, this escape happened a year ago. And since then, DCS has been informed, the police has been informed, G4S knew, and nothing happened. So that clearly points to either corruption or like a high level of indifference. People just simply don't care, or they don't want this to come out. But the authorities have been involved. They've known for over a year. So why has no action been taken? Why was no action taken when I exposed an inmate who was tortured to death by G4S guards? That's been ignored. That's been stuffed under the carpet.
But why do you think that's the case? Why have they ignored it and stuffed all these type of things under the carpet?
Well, it's not just the authorities. It's the wider South African society that doesn't seem to be a lot of care for this group of people, or maybe because there's such a lot going on in South African society, such a lot of corruption. I don't know, but it surprises me that that people know, that authorities know, that government authorities know, that the media knows, that citizens know, yet nothing happens.
And here's the last thing. I mean, in terms of in terms of this particular, the latest round of exposés around Thabo Bester, it's been put forward by a media company called Ground Up, which is not the biggest company in the world, but they've certainly done the job well. I mean, it highlights again the critical importance of the role of the media as the watchdog of the people on behalf of the people, right?
Yeah, I guess now we know, but I mean, it's something that I've been doing for 11 years now. I've been informing everyone, and everybody knows, because my expose in 2013, it went international. BBC covered it, CNN, the minister announced an investigation. It was covered widely in South African media. What happened? Nothing. There's just no accountability. I've been here before, just to sound a bit cynical maybe, but I'm just waiting for actual accountability. I can't see it yet. I think what should happen is G4S should lose the contract, should be held accountable, should be a public inquiry, more than just a media hype.
And let's see if that happens. In fact, we'll leave it at that, accepting to tell you that, some of the links to your own exposés, feel free to tag Salam Media, and do tag myself, Ashraf Garda, on all the social media platforms. You will find me. I'd be very happy to share that and amplify that even further, to remind people not just of the present tense, but also what's happened around the same prison and the same management team in the past tense, because the present and the past are clearly interwoven, as we obviously can see here. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
There we are. Lots to consider there. Ruth Hopkins giving us her thoughts, particularly around Mangaung prison. And get a book, Misery Merchants, amongst the many others that she's written around this. So, I mean, maybe less about regarding Thabo Bester, just a bizarre story around that. And there's also a thought that if, for example, being on the run, and he's been the serial rapist, that if he commits any further crimes, then, will the state be held responsible for that? But again, how to nail down the state? If you can nail Thabo Bester down first, I mean, that will certainly help. Your opinions on that, tell me, 061 766 0355, or comment on the comment section at the bottom of any of the social media platforms that you're watching this, that Salam Media has pushed out. Right, we're going to talk about another bizarre story of an imam in India who was beaten up, had his beard cut off for refusing to chant Hindu religious slogans. I say India because that's a hot topic in India right now, and it's hot for all the wrong reasons, right? We'll talk about that right after this.